Hello. Whilst the governments of the world, and particularly in Britain, have been running a relentless campaign of psychological warfare against their own people, telling all of us that we must keep our distance from our friends and families, that we are a danger to them, we could infect them, we could kill them just by getting close, and therefore we have to behave in certain ways, and have been using mind controlling propaganda on every street corner to get us to comply with their dehumanising agenda. At the same time as this, the same governments have been telling us, or those of us who dig a little deeper, that this is all a scam. It's coming from the horse's mouth. You do not have to go to conspiracy websites to find that this is all a complete fraud. Here are some examples. On the 19th of March 2020, the British government downgraded COVID-19 as no longer a high consequence infectious disease. That is on the government's website, anyone can read it. Also, on the 30th of April 2020, the Chief Medical Officer Chris Whitty himself stated in a press briefing that the vast majority of people will have no to very mild symptoms of COVID-19, and that's all they will get. Only a small number of people in the most vulnerable categories will sadly die of it. That's Chris Whitty. It's coming from his mouth, from the horse's mouth, from the guy who has been spearheading this policy of lockdowns. He is telling you that the vast majority of people will recover and only a very small number will sadly die. Now, much more recently, we have the World Health Organization openly acknowledging that the PCR test that has been used worldwide to keep this COVID regime going, to use to justify more lockdowns by claiming we have more cases, more infections, more positive test results. The WHO is stating that this test is not fit for purpose and is openly admitting that there are many false positives. This comes on an update on their website from the 20th of January this year. WHO requests that users follow instructions for use when interpreting results for specimens tested using PCR methodology. WHO guidance, diagnostic testing for SARS-CoV-2 states that careful interpretation of weak positive results is needed. The cycle threshold needed to detect virus is inversely proportional to the patient's viral load. Where test results do not correspond with the clinical presentation, a new specimen should be taken and retested using the same or different NAT technology. WHO reminds IVD users that disease prevalence alters the predictive value of test results. As disease prevalence decreases, the risk of false positives increases. This means that the probability that a person who has a positive result, SARS-CoV-2 detected, is truly infected with SARS-CoV-2 decreases as prevalence decreases. Most PCR assays are indicated as an aid for diagnosis, therefore healthcare providers must consider any result in combination with timing of sampling, specimen types, assay specifics, clinical observations, patient history, confirmed status of any contacts, and the epidemiological information. So, in other words, they are admitting that there are many, many false positives. And even Anthony Fauci, in an episode of the Science podcast This Week in Biology, in July, admitted that PCR tests with a cycle threshold over 35 are pretty much useless and unreliable. And yet, throughout the world, there have been PCR tests with a cycle threshold of 40 to 45. So they are telling you that this test is fraudulent, that this test is not fit for purpose, that there are many false positives. And so therefore all this talk about cases is meaningless. So it's coming from the horse's mouth. You do not need to go to a conspiracy website to see that there is something wrong. You just have to dig a little deeper and have some bit of healthy skepticism. about whether this mind-controlling propaganda is all it is made out to be. Now, it's interesting why the WHO are saying this. Given that the governments of the world have been following the WHO, and if you go on a Facebook, you are often your posts are deleted because they're not in line with guidance from the World Health Organization. I mean, exactly why should I trust the World Health Organization when they keep yo-yoing on stuff? Who made them an authority? That's a good question, but somehow they're supposed to be this trust authority. Well, in that case, what everyone should be doing then is saying, right, the WHO has admitted that all these tests are unreliable, that there are many false positives. They have said it's coming from the horse's mouth, and therefore we need to investigate whether these lockdowns were actually justified, and we need to reverse this COVID regime. We need to end this COVID regime because they have admitted from the horse's mouth that the very PCR test that they are using to justify these lockdowns and to continue the COVID regime is fraudulent. That's what they should be doing. But I doubt if that will happen. There's several things that could happen. As the vaccine gets rolled out, they may reduce the cycle threshold so they can claim that the vaccine worked, that it reduced cases, when no, what you did is you changed the test so there are fewer positives. Or they might use it to claim that lockdown worked. They might say, hey, lockdown worked, fewer cases. Possibly because there was less testing, just like there was, I believe, in Melbourne, Australia, when it was under a very strict lockdown. Or when they change the nature of the test, lower the cycle threshold, so you get fewer positives. I can see them very likely to twist this in some way, but people need to know that you don't have to go to a conspiracy website to see something is going wrong. It is coming from the horse's mouth that this is a fraud. Thank you.